We were missed some deliveries because there was no fuel available. And the biggest shift you see, during the GST period, everyone was talking about centralization of warehouses, bringing in large warehouses, consolidation of warehouses, making mega parks and all. Now the biggest change in India which has happened is the quick commerce. Now everyone is talking about small warehouses, being close to the customer, to ensuring the right product is being delivered. The biggest, I would say, the backbone is the technology and the people. So I think the technology is the biggest element, but more than technology, which a lot of companies were able to solve it and crack it, I still say the biggest challenge today for supply chain industry is the people. For AI it's a machine, You feed something, it will give some results. The biggest problem today is whether to have a right quality of data to be fed to them.
Hi, hello, namaste, and welcome to a new episode of Logistics Pe Charcha. I am Prajakta Karnik, editor of Logistics Outlook magazine, and today we will be discussing on one of the most interesting yet critical segments of the entire logistics ecosystem, which is cold chain logistics. India's cold chain industry is witnessing a pivotal change, and right from pharmaceuticals to e-commerce to quick commerce, food processing, every sector requires a cold chain. And today, to discuss the critical aspect, we have with us Mr. Abhilash Amula. He is the founder and CEO of ReeferON Supply Chain Solutions. Welcome, Abhilash, to us.
Hey, hi Prajakta, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Good.
So, how is the industry taking you?
It's really going good, with that aspiration which we have started, ReeferON in November 2023. We are living up to it. So we just started and then we have a lot of things to do.
So I would first like to understand about your journey into this industry and why did you come up with this idea of ReeferON supply chain?
So basically, just to give a background, so I'm a hardcore Mumbaiker, born and brought up in Mumbai. I did my diploma, BE and an MBA. And when I was doing my MBA in international business, when I was talking to the people and they said, there's one thing which will going to always remain is supply chain, is logistics, which will be always there. And that's where my journey into logistics has started. I started my career at Nhava Sheva. I was operating out of Nhava Sheva. I used to travel like 6 hours every single day from a place called as Worli in Bombay up to Nhava Sheva. And that in fact is the first trigger in terms of what kind of infrastructure we are living in. And so after 20 years now, if you go to that place, Nhava Sheva, where you have an international airport coming in, the roads are there. At that point of time, you never had roads. So I can see the transformation which has happened in the last 20 years is a clear picture about how India is changing. Post my career with Aspinwall, a company called Aspinwall, I was operating and handling the customs clearance, all those operations. I have moved across multiple companies. Then I worked for a company called as Denisco. They are the largest food ingredients company globally. I was handling their entire supply chain, starting from their manufacturing, production planning, import raw material and all those stuff. Then I was heading logistics for an Australian company called as CHEP. That was a time where I had spent a lot of time in terms of understanding the data, taking care of the manufacturing, compliances. Was part of a journey called as a SEDEX certification, which again is one of the important aspects when it comes to compliance in India. And that's where one of the key area which I still feel Indian supply chain leaders have to focus a lot. We were like doing close to 5,000 shipments a day. Again, interesting piece was that we had actually handled when they say cash on delivery, we had actually handled the cash. And I remember at that time, we went to Flipkart and said, we are carrying the cash, which is a risk for me. Then they have introduced something called as M-swipe machines. Now that was the area where we have moved from cash to swipe machines. We used to get an OTP for transaction and there was never network available. So that was a challenge which we had, but then we have run through and post that. I worked with companies like Delex, Reliance, DP World, DHL. I was the director for DHL for 2 of their companies. I have launched something called as, I was part of a product called as Integrated Supply Chain Solutions for DP World. So that was basically a journey. And then 2023, I started ReeferON.
Since you have worked with international firms as well in the world, I would like to understand from you, everyone is, every day you wake up and something new is happening in the global scenario. How do you see that everything, impacting this industry, especially the cold chain, because airspaces are closed most of the times. Earlier it was, it was a disaster. In that, air cargo basically plays a major role when it comes to cold chain supply chain. How do you assess of what was the impact that the industry has faced.
So if you see one thing which which has happened very recently, we all heard, what Modi ji had said, work from home and all those things. Now this is a very clear trigger that there is an impact in terms of the oil coming into India, the diesel, the fuel, and all, and that's where a clear focus is all towards how we can build a sustainable solution when it comes to logistics. So I can take a pride in saying that we are the first of those companies in India who started reefer electric vehicle. Now, what happens when you run a reefer vehicle? It's like a double consumption. A fuel or diesel is being used to run the vehicle, and then there is a reefer unit. Again, that is also being used by diesel. So the consumption becomes double. Now, what is the biggest alternative was building the entire vehicle as well as a reefer unit on electricity. So we were the first guys in India who actually started this along with an OEM called as QSafe, and now we are working with multiple such brands. Very fortunate, we work for an international brand as a part of their global sustainability initiative. They're one of the largest in chocolate. We did a trial for a month. It went successful, and for almost a year now, we are running it across multiple locations. Now, in last 1 month, I could say I have closed, for me as a business, I've closed a deal with 3 customers for using reefer EV vehicles. And very interestingly, I was having a conversation with someone very senior from the industry, and I was sharing about all this thing. And then, everyone connects a dot with Modi ji. Modi ji is there everywhere. He inspires us. And that's where the sustainability comes in play. So I talked about how we are driving in terms of building reefer EV vehicles. And they were like, yeah, why don't you put 10 vehicles with us? I said, let's start immediately. So I think that's one thing which is playing a vital role in terms of the global impact. And that will going to change a lot in India, especially when it comes to cold chain as a sector.
How about the transit times? Because that takes a lot of even fuel, and overall when it comes to perishables or certain for that matter even pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
So those are largely important. So in that scenario, the entire transit times getting delayed. So how is the industry? How is the industry being impacted when it comes to that?
Yeah, specifically when I talk about domestic logistics per se, that's a major focus area for us as of now. So the transit, again, very, very small examples, we do a lot of last mile delivery, multiple companies. So we were missed some deliveries because there was no fuel available. A truck owner comes back saying that there was a large queue. We couldn't get the fuel for today and our deliveries got impacted. So again, connecting back to my previous point, in terms of what is my alternate solution to ensure all these things is the electric vehicle piece. In terms of transit duration, transit time, that's where the biggest challenge is. But then the biggest problem when it comes to cold chain as an industry, let's say for example, if I'm operating a normal truck and there is no fuel, for me, the only impact is I just keep my vehicle aside. There is no impact to the product. There is no impact to the product temperature, product compliance and all. But when it comes to a cold chain vehicle, now when the entire vehicle as well as entire reefer unit is being run through diesel, the moment diesel is not available, the entire product goes. So the fuel availability becomes vital for them in terms of operating a diesel vehicle or a reefer vehicle.
According to you, what are the overall challenges that India per se is facing? Now we are talking about the global, but for India, when we talk about becoming a hub, what are the challenges that the industry has been specifically facing?
So it would be interesting, to understand how there is a paradigm shift which has happened. When I started and I will try to put across in 2 parts. Supply chain is divided into 2 things. What we call as one typically is a transportation, and then there is a warehousing. And I always cut it down into only 2 things, which I call as a visibility and availability. Supply chain is all about that. It's all about ensuring the right product is available at right place at the right time. And this is driven by 2 things which I call as visibility and availability. 20 years back when I started my career at Navasheva, the way the tracking of vehicle used to happen, I remember the fleet owner used to tell the driver, wherever you go, wherever you find a telephone booth, just give us a call. And then they used to have a large register wherein they used to put the time log. So you can imagine the visibility is almost zero. There is no visibility where the truck is. Today, if I order anything from Swiggy or Zomato, I know where exactly the rider is. Now you can see the paradigm shift which has happened in terms of zero visibility to the highest level of visibility. When it comes to warehousing as well, we used to talk about typically the godowns. Now from godowns, we talked about warehouses. From warehouses, you talked about modern warehouses. Then we talked about ASRS, ultra warehouses, WMS warehouses. And the biggest shift you see, during the GST period, everyone was talking about centralization of warehouses, bringing in large warehouses, consolidation of warehouses, making mega parks and all. Now, the biggest change in India which has happened is the quick commerce. Now, everyone is talking about small warehouses being close to the customer. Very interesting insight. I was sharing some insights with one of the company in terms of their last mile delivery network, and they were planning to do the entire Mumbai fulfillment from one location in Bombay. So I've given them a very good example. I said, today, if you are running a quick commerce company for a city like Mumbai, I'm talking about Mumbai BMC geography area, you need minimum 50 dark stores so that you can deliver in 3 minutes. When it comes to food commerce, let's say Swiggy, Zomato, food platform, they talk about 30 dark stores. When it comes to e-commerce, Amazon, Flipkart, they talk about 20-25 dark stores. When it comes to express logistics, the courier companies and all, we talk about 8 to 10 dark stores. Now this talks about your delivery SLAs and all those things. So that has done a paradigm shift in terms of how you fulfill the customer. Now customer, as a psyche of the customer, it has become the convenience. They know, the moment I can order my breakfast now and go to washroom, come back and the food is there. So I think that has been a major change, and this has changed a lot in terms of how entire logistics as an industry being seen. Earlier we talked about godowns, now we talked about the micro dark stores. The technology has changed. In terms of the transportation, as I said, earlier we were running without visibility. Now a rider has 100% visibility where exactly he is. In terms of trucking, long haul truckings, we used to talk about India moving 300 kilometer a day. A truck used to run 300 kilometer a day. Then a lot of companies came in, express logistics companies came in, they talked about 500, 600 kilometers. Then I work for a company called ReeferON. We were able to hit 800 to 1000 kilometers a day. Then e-commerce came in, they said we do 1000 plus kilometers a day. So now that is a shift which is happening over a period of time. But the good thing is parallelly which is happening, if I want to run 1000 kilometers a day, whether my infra is available or not. So what has happened is that roads are becoming better and all. GST has come. In terms of the customer behavior has changed, but then parallelly, good thing which has happened for India as a country is that the current government, appreciate a lot in terms of how they have built the infrastructure over a period of time, abolishing all these forms, GST coming in play. It has actually helped the vehicles to turn on faster. And that helps a lot in terms of, especially when it comes to logistics, that helps a lot.
Then it becomes a challenge when it comes to products like milk or perishables more. So how the industry is coping with it? There must be a lot of pressure, and obviously when it comes to assets, it's real estate. The prices are high.
So what has happened is that I want to put across in two perspectives. So I work on one category very aggressively, and that category is ice cream. So apart from ReeferON B2B business and all, we also run a dark store company called Propel Pad. So we have 7-8 dark stores in Bombay. And if you're ordering any ice cream from Swiggy and Zomato, it is supplied from our dark stores. So what has happened is that if you see, ice cream is a category, what we used to do, we used to go to shopping mall, we used to buy an ice cream. But in back of the mind, it was always a stress, by the time I go home, this ice cream will melt. Now that the thing has changed completely. At my house also, we have a practice. While having a dinner, I place an order for ice cream. And the moment it is finished, my ice cream is there. Good thing for a customer. So I'm putting a customer perspective. Good thing, customer knows very clearly the product will be available at the right time, at the right place and all. But he also knows in case if the product is not in a good condition, he get a liberty of getting a refund.
Correct.
So today, customer has got that convenience. And you, as you rightly said, there is huge amount of pressure which is built on the supply chain. Now, ice cream is getting manufactured some part of the world. Let's say Nasik, it is getting manufactured. I need to ensure that the same ice cream being delivered at every single place across India in the right temperature. Now that's where the entire play comes from people like us. We work with multiple brands in terms of handling their warehousing, in terms of handling their last mile logistics and all. The first thing is all about ensuring how your vehicles, how your product are being moved in a compliance form. So technology plays a vital role. Today, if this fulfillment is happening to a customer, let's say you order one single cone of an ice cream. Now, when the product is getting manufactured, they are manufacturing in lakhs of liters. and then this is being moved from one location to a large mother warehouses, from mother warehouses to small warehouses, and then from distributor to last mile delivery. To ensuring the right product is being delivered, the biggest, I would say, the backbone is the technology and the people. Now, every time when I say technology, again, linked to the availability and the visibility. So let's say, for example, the ice cream is typically gets manufactured at, plus 5 degrees, it gets blast freezed and all. But when it is moved from one location to another, it is always, for logistics guy, the important part is to ensure the product is being moved in minus 20 degrees. How sensitive it is, I will tell you, typically, if you treat a truck, they open the entire door and then they move the product. When it comes to a cold chain ice cream vehicle, you have 2 doors and then there is something called a small pigeonhole. So a single crate is being moved inside and outside just to ensure that the product is not being used. So the moment the vehicle goes in, the temperature is being maintained, and there is something called as pre-cooling of the vehicle. Before the vehicle product gets loaded, you need to ensure the vehicle is being maintained to that level. And in the entire movement of this transit of the vehicle, there is something called as a control tower in the back end who actually ensures that the vehicle is being maintained at the right temperature. So the ice cream is being moved in the right temperature. Again, when it gets unloaded, there is a standard practice to check every single box in terms of the temperature. Once that is done, it is again kept in the cold storages. Again, the technology comes in play. At every cold storage, you have again temperature sensors, which gives you what is the temperature of that chamber. Again, when you move it, the temperature is being checked. So what is happening is that although the legs are multiple, but over a period of time, the technology had played such a good role, which is helping us to understand the 2 parts, as I said. The visibility in terms of where the product is, visibility in terms of the condition of the product, the temperature condition of the product. And the more importantly, it also helps in terms of the availability, in terms of my inventory level, in terms of my FIFO level, my first in, first out and all. So I think the technology is the biggest element, but more than technology, which a lot of companies were able to solve it and crack it, I still say the biggest challenge today for supply chain industry is the people. You build the best in class technology. I was part of a company called as ReeferON, and we used to, and then again, 2017, we were far ahead. We used to call ourselves as a technology logistics company. And we always used to say to the people, don't put your brains, use technology. It was highly foolproof, but then still, after having a foolproof solution also, people miss. So the biggest problem which I strongly feel is having people who actually uses this technology in a right form. So you can get the best in class, I would say, arms and ammunition, but if you don't get a right operator, it's of no use.
Are your clients getting too demanding? Because for them, they will be like, okay, I have handed over the product to you, now it is your responsibility if anything happens.
Absolutely. When it comes to cold chain, I think, that's where it's a very common debate which we always have. When it comes to cold chain, for a supply chain company, the risk multiplies. Because it's my responsibility, it's our responsibility to ensure the product is being transported or kept in the right temperature. And that's where the entire technology, games come in play, wherein we regularly monitor. We have a control tower which monitors what is the temperature of the vehicle, where exactly the product is. A very, very interesting thing, this is typically like a house refrigerator. And this goes through a cycle, wherein it hits a temperature and there is something called as cut off of the unit. It goes down, again it builds it. I had instances, and I don't want to name the company, but I had instances wherein they had some issues with the product and then the customer arguing with us saying that, dekho ye niche chala gaya. I said, sir, it doesn't happen like that. It's a reefer unit. It will go into cut off. It will go into further build it. So it becomes challenging, and that's where, to avoid the gap or ambiguity between the customer, this plays a vital role. And a lot of the time we give an access to the customer to see how the entire vehicle was moved throughout the journey, how the temperature was being maintained, and there was no abuse in temperature. And customers also, because now everyone has matured and people do shift. I was on that side of the table. I also on the supply chain side of the table. So logistics heads, supply chain heads understand the criticality of it. So whenever there is a vehicle breakdown, that's the nightmare for all of us. And then we look out for a crossing of the vehicles, getting a nearest cold storage and all those things. But customer do understand and they help us out. And it's always good for us to be transparent in terms of whatever happened in the vehicle.
So are we seeing that shift? Earlier we just had 3 PLs. So are we seeing the shift to becoming like 4 PLs? Because you mentioned about control towers. So giving end-to-end visibility is what.
So I think that's the key now. If I add another layer of a PL, from 3 PL to 4 PL, A lot of companies, in fact, we are also working on that model wherein we also do entire demand planning for the customer. So, because we say customer, you just focus on building your brand, focus on manufacturing your product, rest everything will be taken care of others. So we ensure that what product, what quantity of product, what type of product should be manufactured, should be procured, should be supplied, should be maintained, and what level of operations being maintained. So that is something which we also do, and that's something which is very important for brand as well. And there is also a methodology wherein you buy the inventory. The brand says, okay, if you have so much of knowledge and understanding about handling the product, why don't you buy the inventory and do it? So that's also a model, and that's where for us also it becomes really serious in terms of ensuring that everything is being managed end to end from our end. So that's a play. For sure that's a play, and we are already in the race, and a lot of companies are doing that.
We've been talking about infrastructure. You said the roads are widening, the roads are getting better, but at the same time, we are also complaining about roads being bad. In that scenario, certain products, especially when it comes to reefer, if there is potholes or whatever it is, the roads are not good, it can damage the kind of products that you carry, especially when it comes to pharma also.
Absolutely.
So in that scenario, how do you all manage it? How is the industry managing it?
So what's happening is today, again, when it comes to cold chain and pharma specifically, I was speaking to, very interestingly, I was speaking to one of the supply chain head of a pharma company. So he said, we pack all our products in a dry ice, in thermocol box, and then we move in reefer vehicle. I said, why you do that? If you are using a reefer vehicle, you don't need to do it. And he said, the value of a good which we move in a truck is close to 2 to 3 CR. So we need to be doubly sure in terms of what we do. So again, very interestingly, I don't understand why it is so, but then the compliance standards in India, when it comes to compliance standards, the compliance standards in India for pharma are pretty high when it comes to food as an industry category. Now, coming back to your question specifically in terms of the infrastructure within city, that's a problem which is there. But the problem majorly happens when it comes to a last mile delivery. When we do our city deliveries and all, where you have bad road conditions, when you have huge traffic and all those things. But especially when it comes to national highways, the movement between city to city over a period of time, that has been improved, that has been helped a lot. So this last mile delivery has an impact, but then again, still when we do a B2B kind of a business, still that is manageable because the customer at that end also understand, if you're moving a truck in the peak hours, again, there will be certain limitations, there will be certain challenges and all. But when it comes to a typical B2C, the bikers and everything, customer is really finicky. If I'm ordering an ice cream, if the ice cream gets melt, then customer will reject it directly. So that's what I think when it comes to dividing into two parts, infrastructure dividing in two parts. One, in terms of the national movement which we do, I would say there has been a tremendous improvement in terms of the trucks moving, in terms of the average kilometer run per a day which is happening. But when it comes to city, again, as you said, the challenge is still there. B2B still customers are okay because they do understand that's how we are living it. But when it comes to B2C, there is a high demand. We did some POC in the past, and the customer was also interested to understand how this can be done. So we are building something wherein at the last mile delivery, when we are delivering this product to a customer, let's say if I'm delivering an ice cream to a customer, so you will know that this ice cream is being carried at -18 temperature. So you have gel pads, you have a lot of other things. So that is something which we are doing, and that's where again I talk about visibility and availability. So that portion of the last mile delivery today, our end consumer is getting a detailed understanding where the delivery boy is, where the rider is, but they're not understanding what temperature the product is being supplied. And in food, still it is okay. As I said, in pharma, when it comes to vaccines and all, one of this pharma company with whom I'm discussing, so they say very clearly, if our product, if it goes negative, it's of no use. If it's positive, what happens for us? Let's say, the dosage, the effectiveness would increase from 1 week to 2 weeks. But if it goes negative, the product is spoiled. So I would say again, going back and dividing into two parts, for B2C, for food, people are still absolutely okay. But then when it comes to pharma, which is highly sensitive, because we talk about vaccines as a product, there is no solution in terms of their visibility and availability. That's where at least we are making an attempt to give that visibility to the customer also. The customer really wants to know, if they are buying. So this customer with whom I'm discussing, they said, one single vial is like close to 1 lakh rupees. So the end consumer who are actually buying it, he also want to be doubly sure if I'm paying, lakh of rupees, whether I'm getting a right product in a right compliance form. So I think that is a missing link which we are trying to do, and the infrastructure, the roads, and all those things is actually playing bad role over here in terms of the delivery timelines. So that is something which we cannot control, but at least we are trying to give that live visibility to the customer in terms of, okay, the delivery got delayed from 30 minutes to 60 minutes, but be assured that during this 60-minute journey, it was managed, it was maintained as per the desired requirement. So that's something which we are exploring.
You've mentioned about people, having the right people you may have the ammunition, but you need a good operator. When it comes to long haul transports, so the driver needs to be equally trained, because any breakdown, he would have access to probably, for repairs or whatever. In that scenario, the drivers need to be trained to manage the
Absolutely.
entire consignment. How is the industry coping with that challenge?
I would say before the driver, the fleet owner, who is owning the trucks, has to be trained. I'll give you a very live example recently, and I took the hit of it, so it's still hard burning for me. So one of our driver, we moved some frozen consignment for one of our customer, and then the vehicle was standing there. We had a live access and everything. At unloading point, it got delayed for XYZ reason, and it was supposed to be unloaded on the next day. Driver didn't have fuel. Fleet owner was not bothered. He had shut off the reefer. So the entire consignment in the morning, when we checked, we had a really bad situation. The product got spoiled, and we have to take a hit of it. So in the morning, when we had a conversation with the driver, he said, "Sir, गाड़ी में तेल नहीं था, मैंने बंद कर दिया." Well, do you understand what is you are carrying? It's a frozen product. So क्या आपको पता है what happens if you switch it off? So he said, I don't know. When we spoke to the fleet owner, he was also clueless in terms of what happens if it does it. So I think the training has to start, and more than the training, I would say the ownership and accountability has to start from there. Now that's where again the technology plays a role. A very interesting case study I can put across. That's not directly related to cold chain. I have one cold chain as well. So I worked with one of the largest company, and we had a fleet, and that's where I had set up something called as connected control tower. So we had an instances wherein we used to carry electronic goods for a large organization, and we were like an exclusive partner for them. And we had an instance wherein there was a theft. The value was really big. There was a theft. We said, okay, we will put in the control tower, we'll monitor and all those things. First time, second time, third time it was a decade. We had a movie scene, 2 jeeps from the front, 2 jeeps from the back, guns and everything, and the value was huge. Then I said, it's done now. And it was a very large organization. I can put the name. It was a very large organization. And technology, I'm saying technology had played a vital role. So what we did as a live case was that we had a control tower. First thing, we had ensured that all the vehicles which are carrying this electronic goods should be those vehicles which has something called electronic locks. So there is something called electronic locks, which is opened only if you give a key from the central head office. No one can open that. And it has a lock from the bottom, from the top, from everywhere. We said no vehicle for this customer without an electronic lock first. Second, vehicle cannot move after 6 o'clock because it was going through some forest areas and all. No vehicle cannot move after 6 o'clock. Third, we said that the products were coming from customers, third party manufacturing. We said we are not going to pick it from there. We will bring it to our facility. We do cross dock and all those things. So we did that. More importantly, what we did as a technology is that in entire en route, because it was a fixed route. Let's say, for example, I'm just giving an example, from Bangalore to Delhi. So we know from Bangalore to Delhi what rate it will going to take, at what speed it will going to take, and at what time it will going to reach. The entire route, we have marked the locations, the restaurants, hotels where the vehicles were parked, and it was geo-fenced. If the driver was not reaching at that hotel during that time, a control tower alarm was raised. Control tower used to call him and used to tell him, if you have missed it, this is the next stop. You need to ensure that you are stopping there. That's one. Second thing, which is something which I also take a pride because that was a learning for me, is that the dashboard which we had created, it was made so beautifully that the first thing which used to come in the main screen, it used to show how many vehicles are with this electronic locks and operating on ground without the lock is being locked. The moment any single vehicle happened that way, we had created such a bizarre alarm. The entire floor used to come there asking what has happened. So it used to give a pop-up saying that there is a vehicle which is running without electronic lock, and it used to pop up like on the main screen. I had such situations. Midnight, 2 o'clock, we used to do video call to the driver. We used to ensure that the vehicle is being locked. So that was something which had helped a lot, in terms of tracking, in terms of visibility. For driver training may not happen overnight, but it's a journey which needs to be done. But in the meantime, you cannot, sit back and relax and enjoy it. So you have to create this technology platform to ensure the driver also understand the importance of it. That was more in terms of electronics, but another in terms of cold chain coming very specifically. We had an instance where the vehicle got breakdown and all. Very simply, we had all our vehicles across India. We knew where the vehicles were moving. We had certain vehicles which were readily available, which were moving empty. We had a clear visibility. Very interestingly, so what happens is that I always say cold chain is a science. If you carry French fries, if you carry patty, if you carry ice cream, if there is a reefer breakdown, every product behaves in a different way. A patty may say take 6-8 hours to deteriorate. Ice cream may take 2 hours. We had a very clear visibility of what product we were carrying and where is my next vehicle available. So we had immediately moved that vehicle. We did the entire crossing. We had arranged the manpower. We had set up everything. So that gives the entire visibility to handle your exigent situation. And again, going back to your question, training of people, training drivers and all, it's a long journey. You need to do it every single day because it's a culture. The culture cannot be created every single day. But more importantly, while saying so, what we can do is to build this technology in place, build this control tower mechanism, build this monitoring mechanism. That had at least helped me a lot in terms of my past 20 years of experience. I think that's one way which has to be taken care of. Today we do that. Today for every driver who is working with us, we give them the basic training, before loading, ensure the vehicle is getting clean 100%, do a pre-calling of the vehicle. More importantly, when we take product from the customer, check the product temperature. We had instances wherein the product temperature was not given a right form. Then the customer expects, you have not maintained the temperature. So we always have that ambiguity. So that's a mandated process. So we build a process. Driver sometimes do it, sometimes doesn't do it. But then we have a team in the backend who calls them, make them understand every single time. And then we try to get to that level. But it's a journey. It will not going to happen overnight. But then for us, it's important that what kind of backend we are creating, what kind of structure we are creating, so that we enable driver to get to that level.
Is AI, every day we are talking about AI, is AI also getting into this segment which can help overall? And are you also using it?
So AI for sure is going to help in terms of data visibility. So what happens is that this is something which I have done in the past in terms of what I call advanced indenting, vehicle moving from point A to point B. So, understanding about whether the loads are available from point B to A. And, AI plays a vital role in terms of analyzing this data, assessing this data, what kind of forward loads are going from what place to another place, what kind of reverse loads are available from there and all. For AI it's a machine, you feed something, it will give some results. The biggest problem today is whether to have a right quality of data to be fed to them. Very interesting, which we are doing is that, and I've done in the past, is that I'm talking to multiple companies, multiple customers, requesting them that you have loads from point A to point B. And I have a customer from point B to point A. Why don't we share the loads? I will be very transparent enough to put across my cost and we optimize the cost. I think the next level of combination of AI driven insights is also to work with this, a shared resources along with the customer. So AI for sure is going to play a vital role, but then more importantly, I would say the data insights to AI, everyone talks about, nowadays everyone says AI is doing everything, but then most importantly, you should also know how to use AI. It's all about asking the right question to AI, therefore a lot of companies or a lot of institutes are coming up to give you a training how to use AI. So AI is there, beautiful tool, machines, everything is there. But then to use them, put across the right quality of the data, that's where is something where we as a professional working on in terms of getting right information. And customers, once they collaborate, I'm sure it will go to help us a lot.
And how about when it comes to using technology and AI in the warehouse itself? Because on road I can understand, but in warehouse?
Yeah, for sure in warehouse, especially when it comes to, so one of the biggest challenge everyone faces today when it comes to warehousing and food is handling something called as FIFO, first in, first out. Now, I can understand, I can share my pain. Now, what happens is that with quick commerce coming in, quick commerce typically has a very clear mandate. They will go in to take up products which has, let's say, more than 70% shelf life. Now, for a supply chain operator, there is a single facility wherein from this facility, I'm supplying to, let's say, general trade. I'm supplying to the branch food commerce. I'm supplying to quick commerce. Now, quick commerce says very clearly, I want product which is more than 70% shelf life. General trade may be okay with more than 50% shelf life. Food commerce may be okay with 20% shelf life. So whether my backend system is ready to put across all these things. Frankly speaking, I work for one ice cream brand and again multiple other brands. We had experimented a lot. Today there is no technology which is able to give this multi-dimensional. So there is one single place, multiple requirement from multiple customer in terms of their FIFO, which is not there. But again, for me, I always see if there is a problem, there is an opportunity. So that's where we are also again building something around technology in terms of giving a visibility. And I always say, you cannot expect a 20,000 rupees labor or a picker ensuring that your product is being supplied at highest level of FIFO standards. Because if you see what happens, let's say if you go to any cold storage, he has to work at minus 20 degrees. Now in that minus 20 degrees, out of let's say 1 lakh of crates, he has to pick one particular product which is above 70% in that particular SKU and ensure that it is being accurately maintained. Next to impossible. I worked in minus 20. I know how difficult it is. So expecting him to do the best job, it is always a task. So technology again plays a vital role. AI again plays a vital role in terms of identifying that. But are we there today? I would say still not. The level of FIFO compliance, it's there. Going to be technical. Let's say for example, when you do case in, case out. So you get a box, then you move box out. It is very easy. General trade used to work like that, wherein you used to get a box, you used to move it. Now quick commerce asks for one single piece of the box. You get a case, you get 10 packs. Quick commerce will not going to ask for one box. Quick commerce will ask for one packet. It says one packet from mango, one packet from chiku, one ice cream box of let's say strawberry. Then you will say mango 100 ml, mango 300 ml. So what has happened? The biggest challenge for supply chain people, especially when it comes to warehousing, is that before quick commerce, it was all about higher volumes, lower SKUs or lower variants of product. With quick commerce coming in, it's the volumes may be big, but then SKU levels have increased. Just to give a very technically insight, what we call as a pick list. A pick list is a simple document which says what all product needs to be kept. When we do a picking for a general trade customer, my line items would be 18 to 20. Particular SKU, this much volume. When I do a picking for a quick commerce, it ends up more than 100. Because the kind of variety which they ask, the quantity is low. So that's where it becomes more complex to ensure that whatever you deliver to quick commerce from the brand side, it is always challenging. We are not there. We still have a lot of opportunity. We still have a lot of scope to get to that level. Because over here, we are not talking about sending one single box. We're talking about sending one single, let's say, one Bisleri bottle. So it's very difficult, and we are not there. We are not there. It's a good area to be there. A lot of companies are working on that. We are also doing a lot of things on that. But at the end of the day, you have a hard one when you are not able to manage that FIFO. But yeah, that's where the opportunity lies.
Now for ReeferON, what is the way forward? And since we talked a lot about technology, so how is ReeferON going to, what's the vision that you have for it?
So ReeferON, the time when I built, the first thing was I left my job with a very vision to build India's first integrated cold chain platform, wherein I said everything would happen from technology. While doing it, one thing I realized is that technology comes when you have your basics fixed first. And I said, the basics are not fixed. Let's focus on fixing the basics. Let's focus on handling the hardcore ground operations. So we got into that. But as a vision, I'm very, very clear. We really want to be part of the entire value chain. And for me, the value chain is from the point of manufacturing to the point of consumption. And I always use a word called as consumption, where the product is actually consumed, not where the product is, sold. Let's say, for example, if I'm in a B2B, I sell it to Zepto or, Instamart or Blinkit. My sale has been done. But when I say consumption, I'm talking about a person like me, person like you, who is actually buying an ice cream. And with that strategic vision, we are building these two companies, ReeferON, which is a B2B company, which has a clear strength today. We do primary tracking, we do warehousing for brands, we do secondary distribution to quick commerce platforms, we do secondary distribution to the general trade distributors, and we also supply to the food commerce. Now my last mile delivery of food commerce is done through Propelpad. Idea is that, my wish list is that an ice cream which is being eaten by, let's say, Prajakta, I want to give a visibility to Prajakta from where this got manufactured, end to end. And during this entire journey, what was the temperature compliance being maintained from start to end? I think that's a long way to go, but then we are actually building it. There is a lot of play which we are doing in terms of building the infrastructure, connecting the dots, and all those things. So that's where the wish list is, to be part of the entire value chain, start to end, by adding operations excellence, by adding technology as an end-to-end layer. Saying that one of the biggest area where we are investing heavily, first is undoubtedly the people. So last year was big thing for us. We bought senior leaders from the industry, because if you don't have people, then you cannot run the business. It's again going back to the example of arms and ammunition. So we bought in a senior guy called Abhilash Amula, who is heading our entire north region, and I called it as Project Himalayas. And then we got Partha Ghosh, who is heading our entire east region. Again, I called Project Sunrise. Then we got someone in west who is heading the entire western part, called as Subodh, and he heads Project Sahyadri, what we call as. And then we have a functional head, Rajiv, who takes care of the entire transportation. We recently bought someone from the industry who has worked good amount in pharma, for building a pharma vertical called as Dipali. And then to drive this entire execution piece, I have asked a support from one of my very close friend, Prakash Gagre. He was a CEO for CHEP earlier. So he joined us as a board of director, helping me. And then along with me, we have very senior gentleman called as Bala here, as a part of the board. So what we have done first thing is to fix that people capability. Now the people is ready. Now I have good structure, good board, everything is there. Then we move to the next level in terms of the infrastructure capability. So recently we took a facility in Kundli. Kundli is like 3 kilometers outside Delhi. So the facility which we have taken, interestingly, has half of palletized storage, and half of mezzanine storage. It is like 5,000 pallet equivalent facility. And then the idea is to add more such facilities across India. So we are plugging the gap in terms of the warehousing infrastructure. Next piece was on the transportation infra. So as I said, we're the first guys in India, or the initial guys in India, who bought EV reefer vehicles. We are betting a lot. We have signed up with one of the Indian QSR company for that. We have signed up with chocolate companies for that. Yesterday I have signed up with, again, one of the B2B company. So today, when we are discussing, I'm sitting on order of more than 100 vehicles to be deployed electric EV across India for multiple brands. So that is a play which we are doing very aggressively in terms of driving sustainability, in terms of ensuring that product compliance, temperature, everything is being maintained. Last 2.5 years, the focus was very hard in terms of building a basics, having a team, ops excellence, process, and everything in place. Now, this year, the idea is to build the technology to take this to next level. So that's the vision and the thought process which we have.
What would be your probably suggestion to your stakeholders that you need to also follow this? Because I am ready to give you give you with good visibility, ensure that the entire logistics is being taken care of. But guys, you need to also do this to help me.
Absolutely. I would say the biggest factor in the entire supply chain, I always use the word called as reliability. So if a customer is giving that business to me, or if a partner is giving his vehicles to me, the reliability factor has to be there. I only ask my partners, I only ask my customers, consider as a reliable partner. If I'm giving that visibility, if I'm giving that availability to you, just ensure that we are a reliable partner. So I think the reliability becomes very important. Customer, and again, that's an obligation for me also. If I take a business from the customer, it's my obligation to ensure that I give that right service to the customer, and I'm available for them as and when required. So that's one thing which I always say, reliability becomes the most important parameter.
It was great having you on this, for this insightful chat, and one of the most critical aspects of the logistics industry, which is cold chain. And it was an absolute pleasure to have you and get the insights from you.
Thanks, Project. It was really good, very interesting session. Would love to have more such sessions, and more detail in future. Yeah. Thank you.